Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Kearney tonight to learn a little bit more about us as you're starting to go through the recruiting process for 2027 roles. By way of introduction, my name is Caroline Viola. I am a campus recruiting specialist here at Kearney. Really happy to have a great panel here of current consultants to talk about their experiences, talk a little bit about Kearney, and answer all of your questions. So before we dive into that, just a couple logistics. We will have time for Q&A at the end of the webinar. So you'll see that Slido is there. You can go ahead, submit questions. And if you see a question that you want answered, you can go ahead and upvote that. If you want your questions to remain anonymous, feel free to send them directly to Abigail Gage. She is the host of this meeting. And in the event that your question is not answered, feel free to email kearneycareers.ug@kearney.com. That is a mailbox that's monitored by our recruiting team, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have following the webinar. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Alex to kick us off.
Sounds great. Hey, folks, I'm looking forward to chatting with you all via Slido very shortly, but I am Alex Smith. I'm a principal in EPI, which is Energy and Processes Industries. It's a mouthful. You can think about all things natural resources, so power, renewables, oil and gas, chemicals, you name it. By way of education, I am a proud Cal Bear. I'm not sure there's any folks on the phone studied environmental economics and geophysics, so I've kind of always had a passion for all things environment. And then got my MBA at Duke Fuqua, so maybe some Blue Devils, where I studied energy finance. So kind of see that running theme of my career is energy, geopolitics, all that good stuff. Fun fact about me, I have a proclivity for all masochistic sports, boxing, water polo, you name it. Boxing in particular, try and go 2 to 3 times a week, and have selfishly forced many of my teams to join me in a class. Everyone thought they were going to hate it. Now many of them do it regularly. It's an incredible way to blow off some steam in this job and get some great extras along the way. So with that, Ryan, you want to do an intro?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you guys. My name is Ryan Cody. I'm an associate based in the Chicago office. I've been with Kearney for about 4 years, where I joined Kearney out of the University of Wisconsin, where I studied industrial engineering. I'm in our strategic operations practice, which is the supply chain practice at Kearney, sort of the bread and butter of what Kearney is known for. So happy to talk more in detail about the strategic operations practice. Outside of work, I'm super outdoorsy. So hunting, hiking, fishing, all those sorts of things I love to do. So I'm actually spending a week in the backcountry of Montana coming up in a couple of weeks. That's sort of my fun fact that I'm looking forward to. So pass it over to Jasmine.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Hey, everyone. I'm a senior business analyst out of our New York office. I am general practice, which means I'm not aligned to a specific practice, and I've worked across practices. So happy to speak to that as we go on in the webinar. I did my undergrad at UPenn, where I studied philosophy, politics, and econ with a minor in legal studies and history. So also happy to talk about kind of coming from that liberal arts background. And fun fact about me is that I snorkeled with sharks in Thailand's Phi Phi Islands. It was a super cool experience. I would absolutely do it again. All right, last I'll pass it to Rui.
Hey everyone, my name is Ray. I'm a business analyst based in Atlanta. Also aligned to the SOP practice, strategic operations. So I did my undergrad at Georgia Tech in industrial and systems engineering, and I have my master's in systems engineering at University of Pennsylvania. Fun fact, while I was at Tech, I played esport, college esport. So I was kind of a competitive esport player in League of Legends. Nice to meet you guys.
All right, I think this one is me. Bear with us, team, as we kind of move through some of the text here to populate in a moment. But in the meantime, I know that you guys will all have an incredible kind of suite of opportunities, right, for internships and for full-time. And so right now, I imagine that you're trying to sort through kind of what differentiates one consulting firm from another. The best way to do that is what you're doing right now, right? Attend webinars, hear from us, but also talk to folks. I think you'll start to see values come through pretty quickly when you have those one-on-one or small group conversations. Some of the values I think that you'll see come through from us, hopefully, is that we all love our jobs, right? We like what we do. We're motivated by client impact. We all have passions outside of this job too, right? We're authentic to who we are, which is really important, at least for me. You're going to hear about water polo and boxing all the time, whether you like it or not. Just stuff that's important to me. We are about 6,000 consultants globally. We'll talk about that in a moment, which puts us firmly kind of a mid-sized consultancy. The good news is that means we are in the conversation with C-suite, right? We're doing the growth strategy work that I'm sure you guys are passionate about, the supply chain work, M&A, that sort of thing. The relationships are there. But that also means that we have smaller practice sizes, right? So you'll see many of us are aligned to practice, or Ryan and I are aligned to practices that have 40, 50, 60 folks. And that allows you to meet them and get to know people on a more intimate level. So it's a really nice combination of power to do the work that you want, but still get to meet people and not feel like you're just kind of a number. The other thing I'll call out on this page, you will have at Kearney no shortage of mentorship here. You'll have a formal mentor, right? Someone who is responsible for you in your performance review, making sure that you're professionally developing, which is great. You'll have informal mentors if you are belonging to kind of an ERG, an employee resource group. You'll have a formal mentor for them. And so all of that being said, like if you don't like mentorship, real mentorship, this is not the place for you. If you want it, it's a great choice. So let me pause there. Kearney team, anything you'd like to add about values? Anything you'd add about your experience?
No, I think what I always like to add here, Alex, is that it's sort of unique at Kearney. And, I have friends that coming out of school went to all different firms, and through talking with them about, differences in culture, it is, sort of interesting the way different firms kind of have different types of cultures. And I think Kearney, if I were to sum it up, it's, I think it's down to earth, it's authentic, but I think it's also like fun loving and very curious people. And I think I've seen it across different teams where you have these people that are generally like on the same vibe, so kind of energetic and excited about whether it's the problem you're solving or it's the Wordle you're playing at the start of the day and everyone's getting so into it and, going back and forth on just some funny random questions at the end of the day in the team room. So I think if you're very curious, if you're excited about solving, really interesting problems and, want to push yourself, I think this is the place for you. And you're going to be surrounded by a unique set of people that I think is very authentic and down to earth. And I've worked with teams that are very different backgrounds of all different places. I'm from a small town in Wisconsin, and I've worked with people that went to Ivy League schools and grew up on the East Coast. And it's kind of unique where you'll have this conglomeration of a team that's from all different backgrounds, but you're all very much on the same wavelength and pushing the pace and very inspired and cutting edge in every different way. And it's very cool to work with a team like that just, comes together and able to work on really cool problems. So I found it to be an awesome place to start out of school.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Ryan. Cool. I know we want to leave plenty of time for Q&A. So maybe I will push us forward then and let you talk about this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give the rundown of kind of where does Kearney land on the map, right? So, I think Alex gave a good idea of the amount of people, right? We have 6,000 consultants, but in terms of where we land against the broader landscape of consulting firms, right? We're nestled healthily in that kind of tier 2 of firms, right? And I think that size of us is really cool because we do have a global impact, as you see on the screen here. We're all across the US, and it is fun to bounce around to the different US offices, co-locating. I think the most fun I've had is actually a week down in our Mexico City office with our team there. Really cool location. And, we definitely take advantage of the street tacos and tequila when we're down there as well. But I think the footprint itself is very cool. But I think in terms of actually how we compete on the work and where we play in the market is very cool. All right, I've been on a number of proposals and projects where we are competing with the biggest firms in the industry, and we're able to go toe to toe with them. And sometimes I think we've got the better expertise, and we actually deliver projects that I think our clients prefer the way we deliver and come and show up at the client. So it is pretty cool that we have this global footprint. And I think one of the unique things as well is the ability to work across global projects. Where right now I'm on an M&A deal. It's a global merger between two multi-billion-dollar companies, and we have a footprint of our team that is all across the world, working with people from Europe, India, Asia Pacific. It is really cool how they come together. And we're able to deliver a global solution for the client. So I think that's really cool, and it does actually unlock the ability to work across the world if you want to on certain projects. So that's pretty cool. All right, I guess we'll keep moving to, I think Jasmine's next up to talk a little bit more about our values, I believe.
Yeah, awesome. So want to talk a little bit now about what our values look like at Kearney. So I'll kind of walk through these 5 and how they've shown up in my life here at the firm. I think first, curiosity. This to me really shows up as being inquisitive, asking questions to those around you. As Ryan said, there's tons of kind of diversity around you at the firm. And so asking questions to the people around you, you just learn a lot on so many fronts. I think this also shows up as being excited to explore new problems, things that are really different from what you thought you might be interested in, but you get the chance to really deep dive on a range of topics. In terms of generosity, I think this is something I've experienced a lot at the firm, especially starting out, fresh as a BA right out of undergrad. Teammates being willing to give you their time to help you think through a problem, give you feedback, or just to even check in. This also, I think, shows up in our firm building. So the social impact work and volunteering that you do outside of your projects. Solidarity, I think this one's really about teamwork. So showing up to support not only your project team, but also others at the firm. This we do through a variety of, again, firm building efforts, as well as IC, being willing to be an expert to the folks around you. Boldness, this is really about being distinctive, bringing new ideas, and not being afraid to challenge the status quo, even as a more junior team member. So I think one thing I was worried about was, what do I have to bring to a team, being a fresh BA, but you do have lots to bring to a team, and it's definitely valued by the folks around you. Lastly, passion. I think this really shows up as exploring topics and projects that you genuinely have interest in, and also getting to indulge in your other interests through other firm activities. So I think all 5 of these really show up in my day-to-day, but I think one fun example I want to give of curiosity is my involvement in Nerd Nuggets, which is an opt-in learning community at Kearney that I help lead. Each week, we send out an email with practical consulting tips and tools that cover topics like Excel, PowerPoint, and more recently, LLM tools like ChatGPT and Claude. So just resources that we use in our day-to-day work as consultants. And the goal here is really to share learning with other folks at the firm and help us all kind of continuously upskill. And the small leadership team that does this, we're constantly pushing one another to keep discovering new approaches and share what we're learning. So to me, this is, Nerd Nuggets really helps me continue to be curious in my day-to-day. All right, I want to open it up to the rest of my colleagues to share a little bit more about what these values look like in their lives.
I guess I can speak a little bit to the passion part. So I think of all the projects I've experienced and all the coworkers I've worked with at Kearney, I think everyone's super passionate about the work that they're doing. They care a lot about their clients and the impact that they're making on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's pretty awesome.
Can give one quickly, and then we'll move forward here on the solidarity piece. Or actually, generosity maybe. Remember on my first day of Kearney, so it was almost 3.5 years ago at this point, I got assigned to support on a proposal around a hydrogen electrolyzer, which even spending a lot of time and energy, I was like, I don't know what any of those words are. This isn't going to go well for me. The good news is we apparently have a hydrogen electrolyzer expert in Europe. Spectacular. So I sent him an email, very, very senior partner on my first day, wasn't expecting a response. He doesn't know who I am. I literally been here for 4 hours, and there's really no incentive for him to respond. Within like 3 or 4 minutes, this man, who I've never met on the other side of the world from me, responded with everything I needed to know about hydrogen electrolyzers, right? All the materials that I need to do this well. And he said, by the way, I'll be in New York, where I'm based. Let's grab lunch. He didn't have to do that, right? But that's the sort of people that we have here who are generous with time. And so if you don't want to be generous with your time, again, not the right place for you. And you just want to help people learn and grow and be better. So very much appreciated that even 3.5 years later.
Maybe I can talk about boldness a little bit. I think that's probably my favorite one besides passion. But so boldness, I'll tell a story also from maybe my first project or 2 at the firm. I was at the firm now, I think for 3 or 4 months. I was helping a principal I'd worked with on strategic negotiations with a supplier. And it was just me and him, and it was the first week of the project, and we were helping get an understanding of what the cost we were going to potentially take out for this client was. And it was just me and him for the day. And all of a sudden it was the CFO wants an update, and this is a $10 billion company. The CFO wants an update. She's going to stop by in about 20 minutes. Can you walk us through the numbers? And all of a sudden I had to pull together a couple pages. They were very simple tables, but it was like I needed to know the numbers like the back of my hand because the CFO was about to kind of, make a bet on Kearney that we were going to deliver this amount of savings for them in terms of their pipeline. And I had to go kind of walk through the numbers. So I was at the firm for about 3 months. All of a sudden, I'm right in front of a CFO, and it's like, okay, this is what you hear out of the leaflet, right? Like C-suite meetings as an analyst. Okay, great. So the CFO walks in. All of a sudden, she's prying on each number. What is the methodology behind it? Questioning my calculations, questioning the method, and the principal was just kind of sitting back because I own the model, I own the analysis, I own kind of all the inputs, and he knew that I knew the numbers, so he just let me speak. And so I defended the analysis, I defended the calculations, everything like that. And she saw that it was defensible that I knew my stuff. And I think it was a cool moment looking back of this principal I'd only worked with for about a month before that. And, he had no reason to really trust me in this situation. This was a 22-year-old college kid that he was putting in front of a C-suite person that was signing off on and the sponsor of our project. And he believed in me and was bold enough to say, okay, Ryan, I've seen him do it a couple times. Let's see if he can, let's take the training wheels off and let's see how he can ride the bike. So it was in a moment where, a few months in, I was able to, have this real lasting kind of client moment that has stuck with me as being a moment where you sometimes have to trust your team and give them a chance to, take the training wheels off. So I think that's very cool. And I think most people have a moment like that on when they're starting out, when you really get a chance to leap and prove yourself. And I think it's very cool where I think you get to do that earlier in this job than you do in really any other job, which is pretty cool.
Right. I think this is my part. So as you can see here, we work across a pretty wide range of different industries and services. And we provide all these capabilities to our clients. So this allows us to work across different industries and services as they continue to grow and consultants to build their capabilities across each of these items in the matrix. So we wanted to constantly create more collaboration opportunities between these industries and sectors, and improve the quality of our clients' work and the synergy of the firm. So I guess currently, right now my project sits between SOP, which is the strategic operations, and MDI, which is the I don't know if it's here, but mobility defense industry, and as well as PAPI, which is our private equity and principal investors practice. So that's kind of a typical project where you get to work across multiple industries and services. For me, I guess I can talk a little bit about the SOP practice and pass it along to the other folks here. So for SOP, we offer a wider range of different services spanning from planning to make, which is manufacturing, to source, which is procurement and sourcing, to deliver. So, and as well as end-to-end, just in general supply chain operations. And we are probably one of the best consulting firms in that specific topic. I guess, Ryan, you can probably add a little bit more onto that.
Yeah, let me add a little bit to that, Roy. So yeah, I mean, Kearney is known for strategic operations. We invented strategic procurement. A lot of firms are trying to copy us these days, but we invented it. We are still the best at it. Let's not hold any punches here. And not only procurement, right? If you want to come and learn how to operate a business in terms of supply chain, strategic planning, procurement, manufacturing strategy, and delivery, this is the place to do it. This is the best in the business. Come here to learn how to run businesses, and they sometimes are going to stay and become partners and specialize in something, but it's also sometimes people are going to come here and they're going to work here for a couple of years and then go be an operator in a private equity company, in a portfolio company, in industry, and this is the place to really kind of learn it well. So we're known for that strategic operations presence, but there's a lot of inroads with other practices like Roy mentioned, where right now he's at the intersection of mobility and defense. There's also right now I'm working with consumer retail, but it's on operation topics. So we're thinking about how the supply chain for this company that's going through a merger is going to integrate with the company they're acquiring. So there's cool intersection points of every project with a given industry practice and then also services. So that's kind of what we were talking about when we think about how strategic operations shows up. But also be interested to hear Alex's experience with EPI, because I know that's more unique with being a specific industry and how she's experienced that.
Yeah, I would say so. At the end of the day, right, you're either if you don't come in as a generalist, you're either kind of motivated by the functional work that you do, so the service, like my two folks are talking about, or kind of the industry, right? So I am functionally flexible. So I'll do growth, I'll do supply chain, I'll do org design, I'll do digital. But what motivates me is continuing to work with energy and renewable clients. So each project can look very different, but at the end of the day, I'm still serving kind of the same sort of company, if that makes sense. Versus service, right? You are going to be a strategic ops expert, but your clients may look very different. And a lot of folks at Kearney will have like a major, we call it, or a minor. It's undergrad groups. It's probably fresh for you guys. Maybe you're majoring in EPI like I am, motivated by industry, and my minor is private equity. So a lot of my clients are infrastructure investors. So you can really mix and match how you think about your experience here. Cool.
I'll jump in a bit with the general practice kind of lens. So joined right out of undergrad and, had no idea what I wanted to do, to be quite honest. And many of you may be looking at this and thinking, I'm majoring in history. I have no idea what industry or what service is of interest to me. And so I think, for a lot of us coming in, general practice is the right choice. And in my experience, I've gotten to work across industries, across services. Since I've joined, I've done some work in our healthcare and life sciences practice. I'm now on a project in our consumer practice. I've done work in our communications, media, and technology practice. So I think joining general practice is totally a fine and good and right idea if you're not sure what your interest is, and you have a lot of opportunities to explore and to meet folks across these industries, across these services, and really figure out, okay, what is the right work that motivates me? Is there an industry that speaks to me that I want to be part of? Is there a type of work that I enjoy doing? And for some people, they're led by the people. For some people, they're led by the topic, and there's time to figure that out. And also happy to answer any questions, general practice, that folks have.
No, great. Thank you all. Some great color there of the, different types of work that we do, as well as our values. So hopefully really selling Kearney and folks want to come and interview with us. So kind of pivoting gears, talking about recruiting, right? So the application deadline for our full-time business analyst and summer business analyst internship are both on August 23rd, which is next Sunday. It's flying. I can't believe August is like halfway through, but if you are invited to interview, both rounds will be virtual. And they will be both a case and behavioral based interview. So what that looks like for our first rounds is you will have a 2-hour interview, and that is meeting with 2 of our consultants. And it is a mixed interview. So what that means is you'll have an hour with a interviewer. And it's about a 30-minute case and a 30-minute behavioral. So you'll do that twice. So you can essentially view it as like 2 cases and 2 behaviorals. If you are passed to final rounds or that round 2 interview, it is just 1 case and 1 behavioral. So it'll be a little bit more in depth with your behavioral answers, a little bit more in depth with your case answers, and really just walking through all of that. So I'll jump over to the next slide just to talk about like the rest of the timeline, but we do have additional webinars on our website. We do have a case available as well if you want to walk through and practice your casing. There's also plenty of resources, Prep Lounge, Case in Point, Management Consulted. We've had one of our partners do a podcast there and talk through a case. So I definitely recommend taking advantage of those resources as well as your school's consulting clubs. Those are just great resources for you to continue to prep and practice and hopefully get that offer at the end of the interview process. So with that, looking at our key dates, we do have another webinar coming up next week. So that is going to be a BA day in the life where we have current business analysts and senior business analysts talking about their experiences of what it's like week to week. If they were summer interns, what that internship process looks like compared to being full-time. So definitely recommend joining that if you're interested in hearing a little bit more about like the more day-to-day of what the work is. Like I mentioned previously, the application deadline is Sunday, August 23rd. We will not be reviewing applications until then, so please make sure that you get your application in. They are due at 11:59 p.m. Central Time, so hopefully you'll get those in before then. Then we'll have an interview overview webinar on September 3rd. Round 1 interviews will start that second week of September, right after Labor Day. And if you are passed to our round 2 interviews, they will be on Friday, September 25th, October 2nd, or October 9th. So you will be notified by a recruiter on what your interview dates would be, and continue throughout the process as well. So with that, I know we have plenty of time for questions. I'm actually going to take the slides down so we can see everyone, and then we can continue with our Q&A here. So with that, Rui, I'm going to start off with you. Coming from an engineering background at Georgia Tech, could you just talk about some of the skills that you were initially assuming wouldn't matter in consulting, but actually were very important as you came in after your undergrad and your master's degree?
Right. That's a really good question, I think. So I guess coming from industrial engineering degree, we learned a lot on, statistics, different, stochastic models and forecasting and so on. So I would have thought that would be more towards, data science and something that I wouldn't be able to utilize. But, here at Kearney, we have, for example, the digital analytics practice, as well as in SOP, we do a lot of work in building prediction models. For example, the supply chain network optimization models, right? That requires a lot of the knowledge in how you can build a linear optimization model or mixed integer optimization model that that I think was really helpful that I learned it during my undergrad. I guess something that I had to kind of relearn was a bit of the way we approach to solving a problem, right? I think at Kearney here, we try to use a more hypothesis-driven approach where you try to break the problem down into different brackets and then different hypothesis livers and then testing each of these hypotheses. So that I think that way of thinking was something that I had to kind of relearn after I joined Kearney.
Great, thank you. And thinking about, right, your undergraduate degree, Alex, I'll throw this next one at you. If someone coming from a non-traditional consulting background, right, what's the best way to demonstrate their experience, whether it's on their resume or through their behavioral interview, that would work well coming to Kearney and coming into consulting after graduation?
I love that question. And I also laugh a little bit because I'm like, in 2026, mostly everything is a non-traditional consulting background, right? Unless you're kind of like a BA or business administration undergrad. And if you are, that's great. Love to have you too. I think geophysics is probably as non-traditional as it comes, potentially, although I did have a step along the way before getting to consulting. I think for me, right, I do a lot of interviews. I actually love when folks are able to take experiences and learnings from things that are quote unquote not related to consulting and apply them to how they think about problem solving. I'll give you an example. One of my favorite was an MBA interview, but still holds. Before MBA, she was a director on a reality show for 6 years. That was her job. And she's had the same question. She said, I'm really nervous about applying my experience. And as we started talking, she mentioned all of these ideas of like stakeholder management. Here's how I work with my peers at the time. So you could talk about in your degree, here's how you work with your classmates. Maybe some are more junior, some are more senior, to solve problems and think through things. At the end of the day, right, consulting is about working with clients and helping them think through problems. And I think regardless of what major you're passionate about, you still deal with that every day. And so if you can articulate to me that you're a team player, that you're inquisitive, that you're logical, you're in. Doesn't matter to me that you're a communications major or an engineer. In fact, I love when teams are more diverse than not.
Fantastic. And Jasmine, maybe just piggybacking off of that a little bit, right? Having a liberal arts background, how has that contributed to like your personal skill sets of being a consultant here?
Absolutely. I think this one's a really good question. So the way that I think about a liberal arts education is it's designed to be a really comprehensive education, right? So you study across disciplines in order to learn how to extract kind of key learnings across the various disciplines, but also connect them together to kind of make sense of the world around you in a way that really takes into account all the different aspects. And so my major was very interdisciplinary and cross-functional. I studied philosophy, politics, and econ. And I'd say that this job has also been very cross-functional, interdisciplinary, whatever word you want to use to describe it, right? So learning to work across functions, work across teams, bring together all those various learning. So I'd say at the end of the day, a liberal arts education does prepare you really well to be a good consultant, because at the end of the day, it teaches you how to analyze the world around you, analyze various types of data around you, written, verbal, and sometimes, folks are concerned that they've never done real data analysis. They haven't worked in Excel. You can still be good at analysis without having that kind of data analytical background, and that is something that you can learn. So I guess my takeaway would be that a liberal arts education teaches you to be good at learning and to be curious and to connect kind of the things that you're seeing around you, which prepares you well for consulting.
Great. Thank you. Ryan, I'll have you answer this next question. The question specifically is, do certain offices tend to lean more on specific industries or service areas? But overall, can you just talk about our national staffing model?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we have a national staffing model. I think some of our competitors have maybe more regional models these days. Some have international models. So very much our teams are staffed nationally. So it sort of comes down to, especially as an analyst, what you're interested in terms of whether it's a company type, a type of project that you're trying to solve, whether it's like, for example, procurement, or you're trying to do top line growth, or you're trying to, do an M&A deal, for example, or due diligence. But we have a national model. So I think most teams I'm on have been some mixture of probably someone from our New York office, someone from Chicago, and then, a mix of people from elsewhere. So right now, my principal is from San Francisco. My manager is from New York. I have an analyst that's from Toronto. And so we'll go to the client site probably about every other week. And then the weeks in between, we usually pick a practice to an office to co-locate in. So either going out to San Francisco, Toronto's fun, but those co-locate weeks are fun because you get to work out of the office versus the client site, which, there's puts and takes of each one, but working out of our office is usually pretty fun. And so, yeah, and I think usually when someone's thinking about where they want to land, and I think I had this moment when I got my offer, the partner goes, "And what office did you want to be in again?" And I was like, wait, there's this moment where if I wanted to live this New York life, I could go live it, or maybe Dallas, maybe San Francisco. So I had this moment of, wow, I could really pick wherever. And I had kind of already, earmarked Chicago because I'm from the Midwest and it just made sense. But I had this, wow, you can literally go wherever. And I had a buddy that's at the firm, and he just was like, I'm going to go to MBA next year and I want to live in New York for a year. So he just moved to New York, and he was in Chicago for the last 3, and now he's in New York, and he's living that life. And now he's going to go to his MBA next year wherever he lands. So I think it's pretty cool. In terms of our internship, though, we do usually recommend either being in the Chicago or the New York office. Not saying you have to be. There's people that land wherever else, but there's just a little bit more programming. I think Toronto as well for Canadian consultants, but there's a little bit more going on in the summer. It's a little more lively. You're more likely to run into a handful of partners, other juniors, and I think specifically in the Chicago office, we usually, lead into plenty of San Francisco too. Sorry. But there's just more going on in our bigger offices where you're more likely to run into other consultants, and there's going to be more events, and also just usually what I like are our non-events, the events that happen after our official events, which are the more fun. So you're more likely to run into those. So.
Great. So essentially, right, it's live where you want to live as long as it's within a Kearney office, and the opportunities you have even before you start, it's very easy to switch. And I know there are plenty of opportunities here at Kearney of global mobility, of even just transfers. So plenty of opportunities being a firm that has offices in so many different countries.
Maybe just one more piece to add, Caroline. In terms of, I think our first couple of years, we recommend people being in a city with the office, but this job is truly extremely flexible, especially once you get a couple years in. And I'm actually next month, I'm going to go out and live in Montana for a month. And I'm not even like telling HR, maybe I should be, but I'm just going to change my home base to Montana for a month. And as long as you have an internet connection and you're near an airport, you can literally live wherever. So my home base is switching to Montana. I'm going to live Montana in September, and then I'm going to come back to Chicago, and no one's going to be any the wiser. So it is pretty cool. And if that sort of thing's fun to think about, it's very fun to you can live that nomad life if you want to.
That's so fun. Amazing. Okay, well, pivoting over, right, kind of talking about the interview process. Alex, you've done plenty of interviews here at Kearney. Can you just talk about helpful ways to prepare for Kearney cases, and maybe just like some tips and tricks of how to be successful throughout the interview process?
Yeah, I'll give you guys two tips. The first is when you start to hit a certain number of cases. I'm sure you're all practicing with each other and have all read the same case books, and that's great. When you start to hit a number of cases, for some it happens at 20, for some it happens at 40, everyone is different. You can tend to sound a little bit robotic. It happens, right? When you do the same skill over and over and over. And so what I love from our most kind of distinguished casers is they are able in every case to find something about an experience they've had in high school or in college, a club they're involved in, and kind of tie it to that case. Even if it isn't the most quote unquote natural connection, it's just something like doing your free time, but hey, I actually do know a little something about this from this experience. And so it doesn't feel like to me you're just kind of forcing a case into a framework, right? You're kind of thinking about your lived experience as a real person in the world and tying it to the conversation. I love that. So that's maybe a little bit more of a stylistic recommendation. The second one is in parallel, as you're thinking about doing your case books and your formal case prep, start thinking about cases with real life events. So I'll use a COVID one, maybe a little bit dated now, but when COVID was happening, right, and we were all reading all the storylines, the newspaper, I would challenge folks to think about, how, if your client is, let's call it the Department of Health or the New York Department of Health, and they say, I need to get this information out to the public, how would you think about that problem? That's not going to be in a case book, right? So as you start to think about real life events and problem solving, that'll help you move you from cost and revenue to really thinking through an individual or unique solution. Kearney cases can be very different. Everyone has a different style that they case with, has different experiences that they're drawing from. And so you guys need to be prepared to talk about things that aren't just revenues and costs. So hopefully that helps.
Great. Thank you. With that as well, just talking about AI, and I think that's a huge conversation right now. So we'll open this up for all of the panelists, but can you just talk about how AI is changing the day-to-day of your work, and maybe just like what resources Kearney has been using over the past, year or so?
Right. Maybe I can kick us off. So I guess from a lens of an analyst, right? For our job, I think AI really help streamline our work a lot. Like the firm offers a variety of different resources that we can use, including Claude, ChatGPT, and Microsoft 360, as well as our built-in, internal AI tool called Glean, right? But it helps us, synthesize on the interview transcripts or meeting transcripts, check our emails. But more importantly, for an analyst, it helps us, build the analysis a lot faster, right? So nowadays, it's more of how you can, what way you can write your prompt or ask the questions so that AI can help you do the analysis instead of you spending 1 hour 2 hours doing the analysis, but now you can do it more efficiently, right? And I think that's something that's changed my life at least the most.
Great.
Megan, should I talk about it from a leadership perspective? I guess that's probably
Yeah,
helpful.
please.
That quickly. So I think my expectation for analysts and associates and even managers at some point is that you are using AI intelligently. And that might sound a little bit obvious, but what I mean by that is it's so clear to me at this point when folks are outsourcing their thinking, right? Meaning you're just typing in the prompt and you're kind of reciting back what it tells you. That's not helpful. Clients are paying us a lot of money, right, to help them solve through these really hard challenges, and anyone can type in a prompt to AI and put it on a page. What I want to see from analysts and associates, when I'm pushing folks to do, is exactly what Rui's talking about. How do we use AI to improve the quality and the quantity that we can put out in a certain amount of time, right? So now we don't have to take manual notes anymore. That's awesome. How do we think about, for me, reading through these massive like utility litigation things that are no fun? So instead I can spend my time driving real insights from those and not spending 8 hours reading. So it's just using it smartly, right? And not just hey, Claude, what do you think about this? Anyone can do that, and that's not super helpful.
Great. And then Alex, leaning over, you were talking about leadership. I think something that's also very important on top of leadership is also mentorship. So can you all just talk about the type of formal and informal mentorship that you've received here at Kearney?
Sure. So I can talk about maybe formal mentorship first, and then would love to hear kind of the informal side from some of you guys on the phone who I know have a lot of this. So formal mentorship, arguably the most important decision that you will make at Kearney is who your mentor is, because you are trusting that person, again, to represent you in performance reviews, to make sure that you are on track professionally and personally. And so I have one. He has been at Kearney for 35 years, candidly longer than I've been alive. No, almost. And so he is my sounding board. As a younger consultant, I did not do a great job of identifying my like personal board of directors. And so I think the good news is that Kearney is going to force you to have one with this kind of key person. And then it's up to you to surround this key advocate with informal mentorship. And would love to hear from you guys how you found that in the firm.
Yeah, I think, the formal mentor is great. I've got a great mentor. He goes to bat for me in every performance review and to try to get me a little bit more on my bonus, but, and certainly someone that's been a great resource as I, have gone through the different levels. I think, probably the most impact has been the informal mentorship I've gotten for maybe more the manager roles I've had. So I think early on, building up my confidence, telling me I'm doing a good job for the first time, saying, okay, we really believe in you, Ryan. Let's put you in front of an opportunity that is really challenging, and we're going to be here to catch you if you fall. I think those are great. Also, I think some of the informal mentorship you get about life and how to approach your career even outside of Kearney has been great. And I think some of those moments happen outside of the team room and the client site. I think one of my early mentors, we both realized we like country music a lot, and so first thing we looked around, and all of a sudden we were buying Zach Bryan tickets, and we were all of a sudden at a rodeo in Wyoming, like less than a year into the firm. So some of those relationships you establish are going to be the pieces that guide your career, and I think really stand out to me as being the most impactful people I've had at Kearney. And I think this model is it's like a wheel, right? People are going to come, they're going to get on the ride for a little bit and get off. And I think it's very cool to see how the mentorship you get from people that are here for a little bit really impacts you. And some of these people move on. Sometimes consulting is a 2-year thing, sometimes it's a life thing. And I think the mentorship you get from those people along the way is very cool. And you can, get bits and pieces of their previous experience, and also as they go to other opportunities, how they also provide that same level of kind of mentorship when you think about how you want to view your career and move on. So yeah, that's a bit of how I kind of view the informal mentorship I've gotten at Kearney, but we'd love to hear from Jasmine or Roy as well.
The only piece that I'll add, sorry, go ahead, Ruby.
No, go ahead.
The only piece that I'll add to, I think, Ryan, that was really, really well said. I think that is also one of the benefits that you get from having a smaller firm. I've found been easier to build a network. So once you start finding those informal mentors, which, as Ryan said, can often start as a really great manager or associate that you worked with on one of your first projects, they're quick to connect you with the other folks that have helped build them up and give them the right direction. And so for me, I would say, as a new analyst, that was priceless. Meeting the right folks and then being willing to also, put my name out there for things and help me get connected to the kinds of opportunities that I wanted. So that was my one ad there, but I'll pass it to you, Ruby.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add another point where I think at Kearney, there's not only the formal mentorship, there's also, I guess, other mentorships, like, your practice buddies, your BA buddy, for me, we have a East Asian Network, EAN mentor. So I think you get to have a lot of mentors and a lot of different people that you can talk to and reach out to for any questions you have, any help you needed. So I think that's something that's super awesome that Kearney has to offer.
Great. Thank you all. I know we're right at time, but I think this is one good question that we can close out on. So if you had to narrow it down, what's the number one thing that candidates should be doing as students as they prepare to either become a business analyst or just go into consulting in general as they graduate?
Real critical thinking, not AI. Can't replace actually critical thinking, whether it's a project at school, your summer job where you think about how to do a little bit faster. That, you know, critical thinking, you can't replace it.
Great. Anyone else? Last thoughts?
Being read into what's happening in the world. I would say it's so easy to get lost in your coursework, and understandably, right? You guys had a lot going on, hard classes, clubs, you're prepping for interviews. Being able to tie real world events to the problems that we're solving, again, will differentiate you so much. You don't need to be an expert on what's happening in the Middle East, right, with oil. But like, if I give you a case on oil, you're going to want to have a little bit of background, right? And there's a lot of things like that that are directly impacting the what we are working on as consultants right now. And so I implore you guys, right, don't get so sucked into your coursework that you forget to watch the news and read the paper and be just kind of like a well-informed citizen, and it'll serve you well in interviews and also when you join.
Great. Yeah, Jasmine, go ahead.
I'll add one more thing kind of connected to actually what Alex said. Continue to explore your interests. You never know how something might connect back to this job. My one example of that is that I worked as a barista for a while part-time. I love coffee. And as soon as I started the job, I got pulled in on some kind of coffee IC making from some folks who work specifically in food and beverage. And I just had the passion behind it. I had not the kind of consulting expertise they needed, but they were like, you love coffee, and so we'll bring you on board. So continue to explore your passions. It definitely helps you figure out where you want to go in your career.
Fantastic. Well, with that, thank you to our panelists. Great to see you all as always. And thank you everyone for joining us. Again, we do have a webinar next week, so hope to see you all there, and thank you. Hope you enjoy the rest of your summers, and good luck with recruiting. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.